Welcome to the Big Dawg Crypto Podcast. This is your number one crypto podcast to hear directly from the movers and shakers, innovators, and disruptors in the cryptocurrency industry. Follow on Twitter for updates and to communicate directly at Woof Big Dawg. That's at Woof Big DAWG. Now, here is your host, the one and only Big Dawg Crypto.
DigitalBits is a protocol layer blockchain focused on supporting consumer digital assets. This is inclusive of assets such as loyalty and reward points, branded NFTs, fan tokens, and notably branded stablecoins. Find DigitalBits on Twitter at DigitalBitsORG. DigitalBits, making the future happen today.
And welcome to a on-location episode of the Big Dawg Crypto Podcast. We're at the AIM Summit in Dubai, and we ran into Tone Vays. Doing good, brother, doing good. I appreciate you taking the time. Now, we're doing it kind of here, right on location. Someone just got off the stage. Let me ask you, is everything kind of shut down? How many conferences have you been to? Is everything real?
Yeah, so this week here in Dubai is crazy. I've been here about 7 lead conferences over at Big New Year. That it became a real hub, mostly because earlier this year, this was one of the few places that was actually open. Right. Businesses were open. So a lot of people came here. They spent time in finance. I mean, you don't spontaneously start a conference. You need 6 months in planning. And everyone was here back in February, March of this year, when everything else was shut down, and I got all the business.
You know, this is my first time in Dubai, and it's amazing because there's just so much crypto stuff going on. Everybody is here. It's been fantastic. Let me ask you this. So when you first got into crypto, the first time you heard about Bitcoin specifically, do you remember what you were doing?
Yes, and just like most people, you hear about Bitcoin or crypto for the first time, and then it takes you years before you actually did it. So I first heard about it from Max Kaiser back in 2011, early 2011, during the Witcher Leagues days. Then it takes years before, you know what, this is something really interesting. I wish I jumped into it back then in 2011 when it was like that.
I always say, people say that, and it's interesting because you obviously heard them in like 10 years and know about it. I always say two things. They might have, they had it and either lost it or sold it the minute it went up, to whatever. So it's kind of hard,
there's also a lot of people like Rat Investments. The moment you have some Bitcoin, everyone else tries to get your Bitcoin. It's really fascinating, and so many people have achieved this through the altcoin space. They're just trying to get your Bitcoin. Every time there's a new token launching, they just want your Bitcoin because they need your Bitcoin to build their product. And then they use the speculation of their currency to continue building their product. That's how all of it works. I've been trying to convince people not to separate themselves from their Bitcoin. I convinced some people, but the majority are still chasing that 1,000% return.
So, and as somebody that likes, the altcoins and whatnot and the theory of all that, I got to say this, you are one of the most consistent Bitcoin maximalist. I'm not always preached by that term. I mean, you just generally in the space, you're obviously very well known, but there's no doubt that Tone Vays, it's like when you talk to somebody that does not waver from that, there's no question about that. No.
That is fine. My opinion that 2015, 2016 interviews about the space, they're just as identical today as they were back then. Not much has changed. When I listen to some of them, I'm like, I could have said this a little bit different. But the general idea is still the same as it was now as it is then.
It's consistent, and I can definitely appreciate that. Institutions, one of the big things we see, you see now, as the space is going, institutions are getting more and more in, asset allocations. I'm noticing even with my father, he's got, one of the big companies saying, hey, even we think you should look at it. Do you find that and then you've worked in less from traditional finance, you're hearing 5%, you're hearing 10%, somewhere in that range. What do you recommend for someone to have Bitcoin specifically in their portfolio? Or do you want to put a number on it? Is that
so? Most people have gold in their portfolio, less so these days. I would say whatever you would have put into gold before you realize gold doesn't actually go anywhere, right? Put at least that much to Bitcoin. We realize that slowly eating away at the rest of the percent of the portfolio. Right. So 5 to 10% of any portfolio, I believe, is reasonable because to me, Bitcoin is one of the safest assets. How did the crypto space is very risky, very dangerous. And we're talking about the crypto space, they are probably right. But I'm not talking about crypto space, but specifically about Bitcoin. And to me, Bitcoin is one of the safest assets from a risk perspective. But that is because I have spent 6-7 years studying the technology behind it. So I trust the technology behind it. The way people currently trust quitting whatever job they're doing and trusting the internet for their job. How many people rely on the internet for their job? I would say a good fraction in the West, probably 20-30% the people who rely on the internet for their job. Like even an Uber driver relies on the internet for their job, right? They would have a job if it wasn't for the internet. Sure. On that was similar trust in Bitcoin, but it's not going anywhere. So I trust Bitcoin for that life-saving, just like an Uber driver trust the internet for his life-saving, because otherwise you would have to find another job. I don't have the same trust in other cryptos, but just Bitcoin. This is why Bitcoin is the safest asset. The fact that it's a scarce asset kind of makes it fluctuate. The price rises as utility rises of Bitcoin, and as trust in Bitcoin rises. And I personally trust it. The more trust you have that Bitcoin isn't going away, or the more you'll be comfortable with it in the portfolio. But also, it's here to change the world. It's gonna, El Salvador has, I didn't expect the country to do El Salvador did for at least 5 additional years. And they're really changing it. And now other Latin American countries are do the same. And eventually, they're absolutely spread to the east. I don't see the West doing it anytime soon. Because I see that South America, Africa, and maybe some of the Southeast Asian countries. Looking at something like El Salvador did. The West is going to swing to the old model as much as they can. The socialist system is starting to collapse. That's why they're becoming more aggressive on the central bank digital currency, the elimination of cash, more AML KYC laws, more invasive taxes, like taxing on realized capital gains, because their system is slowly collapsing and they don't know what to do other than try and make more control of other people's what.
Well, speaking of, I agree with you on that, and I think geographically, as you're saying it, I think you're spot on. But you brought up gold. When you look at gold, when you look at the market cap, what you want to guess the year, I say a year, what time frame? I think right now you look at the lower in market cap. When you look at Bitcoin specifically, where could you see it as an asset taking over gold's market cap?
Very similar. Gold hasn't done much. I still think gold has much more cognitive, listening to the speculation and inflation. But I realized something a few years ago. Before I got into Bitcoin, I was big on gold and silver and mostly silver. Right. I also bought into this idea that silver has been more of the money than gold historically. But the reason for that was the primitive technology of the pre-1900s, where gold needed a somewhat visible micropayment because gold was just too rare and too expensive. So silver was the common money for the internet. But modern technology removes silver from having any monetary value whatsoever. Because even if the world does go back to the gold standard, the current technology will allow gold to be something visible. So silver's only use is an industrial metal. And while that's a use, it's used with that monetary value. And that is why just last year, silver had like 120 ratio versus gold geologically. It's like 17 to 1. And historically, they've been priced 17 to 1. Gold to hold back by 120 to 1 against gold. And that trend will, because gold still has its view as a monetary asset. But silver is losing that, but gold is now losing its monetary premium to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is technologically more advanced than gold. And the way it was built it should be equally as scarce and as secure, but for the underneath. So that's so what the things will respond to against gold. Those should respond against Bitcoin. And I would be surprised that Bitcoin flips Gates' market cap around the next halving, which is like 42.
I can see that. I think that time frame is probably spot on, no doubt. So a couple of random questions. What are the best 3 cities for crypto conferences?
It's always moving because what happens is a country becomes open to the idea of crypto. All the crypto people come, and unfortunately, the majority of the crypto space is very scatty. And once all of the crypto people show up, the country realizes, maybe this wasn't a good idea. And they get very aggressive with regulation.
Right.
That's what happened with Bali and that Wington and then other countries. And now this is happening in Dubai. And like this week, like the central bank of the UK wasn't very thrilled when, and they put in some statements about, what you promoting all of these like crypto investments, things like that. And I somewhat agree with them. Like the monarchies, you're not supposed to go securities, these speculative assets. So it's hard to say what will be the year from now. But I think El Salvador is going to be hard to keep crypto El Salvador now that it's
I can see one.
legal tender. And as other countries open up, Ukraine has recently also became very open to Bitcoin specifically and crypto in general. Other countries, Latin America, maybe Brazil will get there. Argentina seems to go there. I'm hoping for Mexico. It's the countries that were more economically friendly during the crazy pandemic. So the country that had the least amount of restrictions is the country that likes their people having more freedom. It is the country that is more likely to be open to the crypto space. I mean, the reason I spent so much time in Dubai this year was because they were open at really large. Mexico stayed open pretty much most of the pandemic. So I have 5 minutes for Mexico and also other countries. So that's how you gauge. And a country like Australia has done it. Canada's done it.
Well, so one thing, the one regulation, what do you feel about Gary Gensler when you look at him? Is it what you expected? Do you think he's based to doing a regulation as expected, or what are your overall thoughts?
Pretty much what I expected with Gary Gensler. I didn't like to look at unlisted chairman. I don't know if he will do a good job as far as regulating crypto, but at least on like 99% of the people that could hire for that role, he actually understands it.
Yeah,
he understands Bitcoin. He understands the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I can't even say that about 95% of the people in the crypto space. But Gary Gensler gets it. He may not be able to do much about it, but at least gets it. Yeah. And that is the start. At least we can have a discussion. If someone just doesn't understand what is happening, can't have
they try and regulate it, you don't know what it is. I can't see it. Yeah.
So we'll see what he does, but I'm happy that he was the choice.
Last 2 questions. When it comes to food, what's your favorite food?
Oh man, steak. That'd be a good steak. I mean, there are exotic foods. Yeah. I'm a big ribeye guy. It's lose heart of the fire, certain parts of the world. There are some good places here, not cheap. There is other places. In Mexico, for example, you get an incredible ribeye for about $15. Here you might have a 0 or 2 to that, but it depends on where you go. Give me everybody.
Okay, and then music, you working out, just do whatever.
I have been nothing lately. So I've been so back in the day, I was actually DJing on the school radio station. I was DJing a little bit in lounges after that.
Okay.
So back then, my music was aging myself. Yeah. Early 2000s R&B, hip-hop, hardcore, rave hip-hop, and reggaeton, some that music. Spent enough time down in Florida, London, other countries. So that's kind of what I would do with it.
No, I've never said I used to DJ too. So you've got both of the DJs on the 1s and the 2s. Tone, but I appreciate you taking the time, and I know it's super busy. It means a lot. Thank you. newest episode of the Big Dawg Crypto Podcast. One final thing, find you on Twitter. What's the best way to find it?
Twitter, Tone Vays everywhere. Twitter, YouTube. Check out the events. Unconfiscatable is in the U.S. Are you out of the U.S.?
Yes.
I know. Unconfiscatable will be coming to Las Vegas. That's where that event takes place. Check that out. And we also have Understanding Bitcoin that's going to take place here in Dubai in a couple of days. And then probably back to Malta where we were.
Nice. Tone, I appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Big Dawg Crypto Podcast. Follow on Twitter at WoofBigDawg. Woof, Big DAWG. And run faster than the competition. Woof, woof.